Here on New Realities TV, and we'll be ready to start. Thanks for your patience.
Hi, Zenka.
We're in a critical moment in physics during super radiance. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. I just want to thank the Sedona Quantum Consciousness Center for having us here live in Sedona. It's great to see everyone. They just got off of a potluck and biocharger. And I also want to thank Ben for coming out tonight to do some filming and some tech support for us tonight. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
So tonight is a special night. It's 11:11, and we've got quite the expert here to talk about not only numerology, but astrology and kind of the fabric of the universe and what happens when you go a couple layers deeper. I wanted to welcome everyone to Exo Metaverse. If you haven't joined us before, we're nonprofit. We're a citizen science search engine for consciousness that is going to collect our wisdom about things that we don't know about, right? Things that are beyond what our eyes can see. When we put all our puzzle pieces together, we can really learn a lot. So it's exciting to have experts come and join us twice a month. And I just want to tell you who we have coming up next. We're going to be having Area 1358 as a recorded broadcast next, because the next session is going to be on Thanksgiving. And we're going to be showing you absolute breakthroughs that we've been having on our interdimensional radio research. These are on a harmonic of the speed of light at 144, 101. We get different sounds coming out of them. And Tracy has been getting all sorts of interesting things happening. So we're going to be talking about that on the next session. I want to give a shout out to Daniel and Greg, who've been working really hard this week, getting everything ready for the Lightning in the Grid, which is going to be a 22 million person meditation in joy, which is going to be happening in January. So stay tuned for that. We'll see if anything wants to come through the radios during the interview. We also have the Hertox who are going to be joining us in December. And we also have Dean Radin, which is very exciting from the IONS Institute. He's one of the most famous parapsychologist scientists in the world. And of course, the Hertox wrote the Keys of Enoch. So they're going to be joining us live here at the center. And then we have Rob Freeman coming up in January. So he's going to be talking about his expeditions around the world to film UFOs. So before we get into the interview, we're going to do a 1-minute timer like we always do that pulls us into our higher selves and into the field. Let's go ahead and start that now. We're going to do 1 minute and 1 second because that's what it's coming up in. Thanks for downloading.
There's an 11.
There's an 11, right? We're going to be finding all about this. Okay, so let's go ahead and drop into our hearts and into the field. So here we go. Bing, it started, but we had something here. Maybe it's in silence. So here we go.
part worked.
Yeah, that part works. So awesome. So yeah, I'm here with Mathues Imhotep, and he is the author of The Seventh Seal, Hidden Wisdom. And he's been researching this stuff very, very deeply for over 30 years. So he's always talking about all the wisdom that's hiding in plain sight. And we're going to go into some of the details of that. He brought some graphics and everything like that. But I want to start with what's happening today around the world. You know, when I had my first awakening, I started seeing 1111 everywhere, you know, on a guy's apartment, on the, you know, on the clocks and things like that. And I think it has become, in the last 4 years and more, it's become this really important moment where we're all, the kind of light workers around the world, are coming together, and we're thinking, what are we intending and how are we coming together? And it's also Veterans Day, which, so we haven't achieved peace on earth yet. So this is one of the many things that we're going to be building. So why don't you give us an introduction to 1111, this date, before we get into 1122, which Matthews actually thinks is even a more important date. So we're going to talk about why, but why don't you give us a little introduction of, and let us dive into the.
Cool. Well, you know, a lot of people are seeing 1111, of course, and they're feeling, you know, activated by it in the sense of, wow, what is this? You know, is the universe communicating with me? What exactly is happening, right? And so there are those that believe it's activating your DNA. There's just a lot of theory, and I think I might be able to add to that with some of the things that I've experienced and some of the insights that I have. But I also found it very intriguing that many of you may have heard of the Flower of Life and Drumbelow Melchizedek. And he was indicating that on 1111, there's a beam of light that comes inside of the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid.
Interesting.
And that if you were in there at that time, it would like pierce your third eye, and you would get activated from, you know, this beam of energy. And actually, I'm going to give you a little deeper insight as to where that's likely coming from. And so just in general, the synchronicities of numbers that keep showing up is often triggered by 1111. You know, most people see that first, and then you begin to see a lot of your own number synchronicities, whether you're talking about your birthday or you know, something of significance, right? And so all of this is really the sort of divine wake-up call, inviting you to sort of get on board with the ascension process and your own personal journey into your divine consciousness.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think you're right. It is kind of a wake-up call. What would you say is this ascension into your divine consciousness? So it's like an elevator that you're in, and you're going through different stages as you go up.
Well, that's a pretty good definition of it. I think that many of us have come to realize that we are multidimensional beings, and that's certainly what the wake-up call is a journey of self-discovery. And that's really what happened to me, whereby I came to realize that, you know, there are higher selves above higher selves, all the way back to source. And at that level, there's essentially an oversoul. And you can tune into your archetypal beam of light, if you will, that, you know, reveals what sort of aspect of the creator you come from. And so one can, you know, go through an awakening process or an integration process that could sound something like, oh my God, I'm an Arcturian. Or, you know, maybe there's a higher experience. Perhaps it's a later on experience that's like, I'm an archangel. And so all of this is kind of par for the course in this wake-up process. You know, activating your divine consciousness would ultimately lead to you're one of the original creator beings, one of the like Elohim, and you just have to identify with which one you are.
Interesting. So as you step up those higher selves, you become part of the stronger beings that are higher, closer to source.
Indeed. And so in that sense, we're all embodied here and, you know, finding the journey back to the greater self. And that stems from the mother story that is really indigenous to all cultures, which says that everything was birthed from the mother. Like the mother was lonely in the void and essentially said, I'd like to experience love, and decided to create 12 consorts. And that's what many of these ancient cultures reveal in their cosmology. And so she had a lot of fun experiencing,
What are the 12?
well, that's where those rays come from that we were just talking about. And then in essence, she created children with each one of those, and those children became what's referred to as first cause. And when you look at the Gnostic scriptures, it defines all this stuff very well. And that those original Elohim children there are called the 24 invisible ones. And so invisible would imply that they're perhaps everywhere and ever when.
Interesting. So, and you identify with Saint Germain. Is he a ray, or is he just, how does that work?
Well, that's a pointed question.
Well, don't
I
you
have a lot of
identify?
experiences about being connected to him, and I think that it's part of the ray, or part of the the embodiment of the soul. And so one thing that a lot of people experience when they sort of tap into the oversoul is they have perhaps a similar life experience. Many people might say that they're Cleopatra or Nefertiti or whatever, and I believe that we're, all bifurcated from that original, being at source. And so the experience is sort of uploaded into the master computer, and there it is for you to tap into when you're, engaged in that integration.
Yeah, that's always been a curious thing for me, because it's like, well, how can something be more than one place? If I'm calling Metatron and you're calling Met, it's like, what is that? And then someone was saying it's basically like, it is that consciousness that you can then call in when you need it. And then you're accessing that data set of information, right? And you can pull it in. Since we're talking about Saint Germain, how would you describe Saint Germain? I mean, Saint Germain is associated with the United States, right?
Indeed. If many of you have followed his origin story, he was an individual called Sir Francis Bacon, and he faked his death. He was like 63, and he went on to create this persona and embodied that in a variety of ways, because really drinking tea and eating nuts, he apparently lived for hundreds of years. And through that process, it began with Dr. John Dee and Sir Francis Bacon indicating that they wanted to see the New Jerusalem be embodied in the new colonies. And so they started the Order of the Quest, which was part of the inner core of the Freemasons, which they also, had their hand in, even the Rosicrucian Society. And, this whole vision was that the United States ultimately would be a beacon for transmitting to the world that there would be this utopian ascended, heaven on earth reality.
Interesting. So what do you see for the future here in Sedona and just in general?
Well, it's a vast, powerful vision of being the capital of the New Jerusalem, the new Atlantis, the new earth, literally.
Sedona.
There's messages coming through my partners and even myself. When I came here over 22 years ago, I'd recently returned from Egypt, and I knew that the Ascension flame was released from the temple in Luxor, and part of it came here. It's lodged over in Cathedral Rock. And so I've been trying to create a healing center and temple ever since then.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of talk that a lot of people are coming into Sedona because we have an amplification with the electromagnetics, and that we could create a powerful, place that people could come and heal and find themselves, and also, set up some prototypes for what we're moving into. So that's interesting. And that, what do you see in terms of healing and things like that? How would you create something on that line?
Before I answer that, one thing comes to mind about that guy, Drumbelow Melchizedek. Many of us
who lives here in Sedona
have an awareness of this,
by
right?
the way,
his flower of life material and the like, right? And he talked about the 100th monkey concept. You guys familiar with critical mass being, scales being tipped, right?
Yeah.
So the idea too, right there, is that if we put a model together here and we all live it and breathe it and resonate that high vibe through, this is sort of like a subwoofer, okay? And if we pulse the planet from here, it's really going to go across the grid and send that signal. And so the signal could very well be, embody your divine self, and you're going to be washing potatoes and not eating sand the way those monkeys did from island to island. It could just be that simple.
So yeah, that's interesting, because we were talking about fire in the grid and actually sending out, if things are created in the astral plane, sending out our intentions to, literally through our hearts and minds instead of through traditional means. So we always want to remember that we're entering a kind of a new state of, well, it's not a new state of physics, but it's a new, our basic understanding is changing toward that. So it's interesting.
Well, the quantum reality is that for sure. Like, there's some water technology that we're aware of, that the hydrogen can vibrate at this perfect frequency, and it can transmit instantaneously to every other hydrogen molecule in like 1,000-mile radius, and instantaneously all water is transformed into its purest highest state, in the image of the perfect, molecule.
Wow.
So this could very well apply to what we're talking about. So if we implement a model here, everybody steps into their highest, best version of themselves. It could be that easy, that we literally just, quantum permeate the whole, grid.
Yeah, because as all of you guys boost your own, vibration, frequency, joy, you're doing it for the people around you, whether you're in the supermarket or whether you're with someone. Do you want to show some of your graphics? Because we're going to start to really unpack this idea that there are all these symbols around us. They're talking to us, as is everything in your life is really a conversation with source. And sometimes, a lot of the mystery schools and things like that have tried to explain how this all, boils down to these sounds and to these numbers at the lowest level. And I know it's something that you've really gone deep in to try to understand and unpack that. So yeah, let's talk about, and we can also talk about 1122 as well.
I think that's a good preamble
Yeah,
to
let's do
say
that.
a couple things about that. So several decades ago, I was essentially 17, and I had my own epiphanies going on, and my higher self wanted to embody me more. And what caught my attention was every time I had sort of a striking idea, and I'm going to write it in my journal, the real super bright ones, I looked at the clock and it was 11:22. I'm like, what is up with that? It keeps happening, right? And so then there began to be a variety of experiences that happened in November. It was an acceleration of, oh my God, there it goes on the license plate. There it goes on the side of the, number on the semi, etc. Like billboard. Like all of a sudden, it didn't take long where I was like, okay, I'm listening, and then I had a variety of other experiences that just were, you couldn't ignore them. And that leads me into how when I was probably 21, I had a first channeling experience. And I was like, I feel a connection to the Great Pyramid. What's that all about? And they were like, well, you're a cornerstone of the Great Pyramid. I was like, what does that mean? Oh, you'll figure it out. And so that draw to, that structure and complex, led me to, obviously it was like a carrot. I couldn't ignore it. And so I just kept showing up, and it kept opening, and it revealed a lot of interesting things. And from there, I'll show you a little bit about where that took us.
Yeah, my number is 444. Like when I see that, the universe is like, pay attention. Who are you talking to? What are you doing right now? This is what we want you to pay attention to.
And of course, there's a lot of content here. I mean, I wrote 800 pages 22 years ago. And in the last decade, I what is it? Downloading, remembering, it's a combination of things. When your higher self is being integrated into you, it just sort of becomes your knowledge. And so over the last decade, I made 45 videos that get into like a next level of the content that represents sort of what is the light language woven into, the English language, whereby the pillars of the central theme, which is ascending consciousness, were coded with 1122. And we're going to see that a whole bunch of the concepts that represent the simulation perhaps that we live in, from astrology to the alignment of the stars to the construction of the Great Pyramids, actually carries a message.
Interesting.
Okay. And so again, you'll be able to get a closer look at and delve deeper into these things by virtue of checking out, there'll be links, yes? And so you can explore this a heck of a lot deeper. I want to find out which.
Why don't you tell them how to find your YouTube though,
Okay.
because that has so many.
Is the glare okay on that, bro?
There is a decent amount.
Should I come
You're
forward?
good there.
Okay, thank you.
Oh my God, there's the 144 that we're using on the radios too, right there.
And so there's going to be this image is just sort of a collage representing. There's a lot going on. But what was your question again? You said.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was just saying, just explain. I don't
Okay,
know.
cool. So we're going to delve deeper into this. It's a cover and it matches my shirt. So this guy's pointing to the constellation of Orion. 1122 is an alignment with the Great Pyramids. How did I figure that out?
What's aligned to the Great Pyramids?
The
stars?
belt stars of Orion.
Interesting.
And the belt stars of Orion actually on November 22nd are directly overhead. How do I know that?
One over each.
Yeah. I was in there at 11:22 p.m. on November 22nd, about 20 years ago, and something very powerful happened to me. But when I came out, I looked up and the star was sitting right on top of the peak. And so, that further had me go, what are all these alignments about? And that led me down a very deep rabbit hole. And this picture also illustrates how that constellation there also is perfectly aligned to anybody know what the Phi Ratio is? This is a Phi Ratio measuring tool. And so how is it that the divine creator put the Phi Ratio not only into your body and, Mother Nature's formula where everything's unfolding according to these numbers, it's in the sky too? Oh, yes. And so much more. It was really profound to discover that the causeways coming off of the Great Pyramid actually point to particular locations. And when I was in Egypt, there was a poster that I got. It was pretty cool. It had lines depicted coming off of the head of the Sphinx that were actually carved in like the ground, in the concrete. And there were some that they described as pointing to, known dates, celebrations of solstice and equinox, but there was two undescribed lines. I'm like, we need to know what that is. In the end times, all things shall be revealed. So I got busy with making myself sit as the Sphinx and look out at the horizon. And I dialed the astronomy program back, 10,000 years, just kept rolling and experimenting. And I found that the Sphinx was actually on those particular lines looking at 2 days. One is November 22nd. Wow. And the other one really got my attention. It was my birthday. 5/22. So, got me by the back of the neck, or however, I could not ignore being pulled fully down the rabbit hole on this one. So when I went to Egypt for the first time, I was like, reading Drumbelow's book, and he was talking about the Fibonacci sequence and the golden mean ratio and these things passing through, well, almost through the top of all pyramids, this blue line here. But there was another line that was called the Secant Line. And the Secant Line was really interesting to me because it just kept doing that whole, like, do not miss this. And so what I discovered while standing there, looking at the Sphinx and practically having one of those moments where your heart opens and you're sort of like muttering like, okay, I'm gonna, reveal your secrets. It was like bubbling up in me in a very profound way. And I literally kind of remembered a past life and all that, right? Whereby that secant line actually passes through the Sphinx and into a temple. That temple is uniquely built because everything in Egypt is always built north to south, east to west. There's no diagonals. In this diagonal temple, that line went right through this doorway. And if you noticed at the back of that would have been another dot, and that other dot is the Hall of Records. And so this secant line that actually travels through this whole nine squares here tells a story, and it's all about the symbology of Egypt and the characters of Egypt. They have spears and arrows, and they're not saying we're hunters and killers. They're saying pay attention to star alignments. And so I have volumes of information that are essentially irrefutable that this is pointing to this date, 11/22, as the opportunity to embody your divine self more than ever. And again, there's a lot of stuff in these videos, the content is deep, whereby there's examples in the Bible where it's describing Egypt. There's examples in the book Enoch where it's describing Egypt. And so there's a lot of theory about how old these pyramids are. In my experience, shall we say, they're millions of years old. And actually we have civilization after lost civilization after forgotten story. But one thing remains true, the echo of a particular centerpiece story. And we're going to learn about that as we proceed. It's also really profound to understand that the Sphinx actually carries 4 primary qualities. It has holes in the top of its head for horns of the bull. It has the body of a lion. It has the head of a human. And those of you that understand astrology would relate to, that's the 4 fixed signs. And Scorpio, the low sign, you see each sign has a high side and a low side. So the low side to the sign Scorpio has a high sign, and that's either an eagle or a phoenix. And so that's where your wings come from. And so there's a great message that's being echoed throughout all of this. And that message is so paramount that many things were done to make it not forgotten. And this little view here shows what we already highlighted as a possible, wow, do we live in a simulation? Is this really the Matrix? How is it potentially possible that Earth, Mars, and Venus and Moon could sit in a perfect alignment to these structures? Who built these things? And what kind of technology did they have to basically, right now you're seeing a reflection of these 3 little pyramids on sunrise, putting the reflection of the little pyramids on the side of the big pyramid. Pretty cool. That's a pretty good understanding of what's going on this. Well, maybe it's a flat Earth. We can have another conversation about that.
Yeah.
But how is it that on November 22nd, it creates a perfect image of the big pyramid, little pyramid off of this little tiny one hidden behind here, to echo that this alignment, this whole story is so profound, we're going to make you pay attention if you're paying attention.
So why is it called the Golden Gate?
Lovely. Well, you got gold and silver because one gate is the silver gate, the other gate is the golden gate.
When's the silver gate?
It's 522.
Oh.
And these gates represent the male and the female, the mind and the heart, the left and the right, because everything is about balancing these opposites. And that's what the story becomes as you dig deeper into this. The Golden Gate also has a couple characters on the zodiac. The zodiac is kind of like the gospel in the sky. And there's the key characters that are revealing, deep concept. And so you got this guy taking control of the snake here, sitting right behind the scorpion, and this character over here at Sagittarius is Chiron. And so the story on all of this is quite profound. Takes a minute to describe, but what I'd like to enunciate is how you pronounce this guy. Anybody know about the 13th sign? Cool. So there's some wisdom in the audience. Awesome. And so this guy is a serpent keeper. What is he doing controlling the energy of the serpent? What's that represent?
Control of the Kundalini sexual energy.
Precisely. And when you activate the whole system, church wanted to cut that off. Don't play with that. Don't be in touch with your whole self, right? And when the whole self comes online, the church was recognizing that people are going through the mystery schools, and we had superheroes, we had X-Men. Oh no, we don't want that. We got to shut this down. Okay, so they did a pretty good job of shutting things down. They also tried to take control of the energy of the message. And the message, it comes out in a variety of ways. So you've got these twins, Enlil, Enki, Set, Osiris, like there's many of them to recount. And well, there they are sitting on the gates. Okay, I can't quite draw backwards and look at that.
Where's Lionsgate? What's it?
Oh, good question. So that 8-8 alignment has to do with the constellation of Leo. And yes, it does very much come into the pyramid and the Sphinx and all this kind of, buildup. I believe it's all like ultimately a buildup. As you have the thinning of the veils of all these different portals and gates and everything, it's accelerating your consciousness, quickening your path of awakening, designed to culminate at the Golden Gate. So we're going to learn more about the lines briefly that that point this out. I can't find
And
the
let's
proper
get back
placement.
to the importance of 1122. You're not saying something important is going to happen on that date. Well, you are saying that, but you're also saying that it's an opportunity where astrologically we can tap into more energy in order to manifest what we're creating, or how.
Okay.
What
So
would you
let
describe?
me spin right into that. This one also shows these special characters. There's only two of them. They're on the bar that we've just been discussing.
Mhm.
The avenue here across the zodiac. And so the Egyptians knew that at this time, because they weren't really Egyptians, they were people that built that had much more wisdom, and the Egyptians tried to figure it out later. And what was being depicted was that when this alignment comes into full force, the energy of the central sun is being beamed on us in a way like no other time. And so if we have an awareness of it, just like anything, you have an awareness of something, you're going to invite it in more, it's going to activate you to a higher level. And so that's when the sun along the ecliptic sits on the Milky Way, which is the Nile. There's all this correlation to the imagery. And a lot of the other imagery about the scarab and the wing scarab and all this with the sun sitting on top of it. This is all about the transformation of the soul. That's what this symbol represents. And so, they understood the ascension was going to happen in the future in a far greater way than it had in the past. And so much so that even the Freemasons put some of this imagery. You've got an angle arrow here going to the top of a double-headed Sphinx. I'm sorry, this is obviously a phoenix because of the tufts that are coming off the back of the head. These esoteric symbols were actually put in the Freemasons to talk about the ascension of the soul. And so the interesting thing about Egypt is it used to be called a couple different names. There's several. And one of them here is Hepti, and it represents 7. And so the constellation of Orion is 7 stars, by the way. There used to be 7 pyramids on the ground. I've been to the shoulder and the knee. When I went there, I was brought to other pyramids that were the size of the Great Pyramid that nobody's talking about. So those 7 have also a correlation to the number 7. And so the number 7, if you take a look at it, it's a pointer, right? And so it's all about pointing the way.
So are the Freemasons, like, all their data is basically getting like spilled and dished out to the world, right? I mean, they can't really keep anything secret anymore, right?
Well, the hidden core, deepest wisdom was stripped out when the opposition sort of took that organization over. And so many people have gone through that, up to, scaling up the degrees, and they've hit the 33rd, and they're like, where's all the wisdom? Where's all the goodies? And so a lot of this stuff was in there, but it was removed. And those that have gone through that school of thought, at the ascent of it, there is, it's about a journey of the soul to a particular location, to become your higher self, ultimately. And it's pretty profound that this whole region of the sky that we're talking about in the past was referred to as the Phoenix. And so there's core stories in the Egyptian mythology about, everybody knows that the Phoenix is about right.
Like rebirthing from the flames.
Precisely, it's resurrection.
Yeah, like we'll rise out of our bodies to be,
which is ascension.
Yeah.
Right. And so deeper down the rabbit hole, a correlation to these numbers, remember when we talked about a beam of light coming in? So there's beams of light coming from the Palladian system and the Syrian system, and they're merging into the sarcophagus of the Great Pyramid. One is carrying a masculine frequency and the other carrying a feminine frequency. And those relative frequencies also match 11 and 22.
Yeah,
And
so
yep.
like just like Stonehenge and things like that. So when stars align, those different sacred sites activate in different ways, what you're saying? Precisely.
And the Vatican knew about this, and so they captured some obelisks and they brought them over there and they put them in alignment to the horizon, and they're watching the constellation of Orion and trying to capture the power. And they even put in their symbolism. Here's St. Peter's seal. It's got a gold and silver key and 3 crowns. And what that was all about was like controlling your soul, controlling the earth, controlling your body, and controlling the gates, and trying to prevent you from accessing it.
So what should we be preparing anything for ourselves as we go from 11:11 to 11:22? Is it like?
Yeah, I would say that it's a time of powerful manifesting. I think that we should be watching our thoughts. I think that we should be uniting our tribe. I think we should be, aware that the power to become, our greater selves is ever the more present at this time. Do I think that we're going to turn into a ball of light and, there's nothing left after 11:22, one of these trips around the sun? I don't know. We're going to find out together. But even the founding fathers built some things that mimicked what we've been learning about. In fact, the Lincoln Monument was designed to be a pyramid before they opted into, putting the president in a chair, and it was looking across the reflection pool and tracking this alignment. So the church knew about this stuff. They even put the imagery right on a cross. This cross over here has the 4 fixed signs. We learned about the lion and the human, and so how are they putting this right in front of our face and we don't know what they're talking about? Some of the other symbolism that they're putting in front of us here is an 8-pointed star, which is the fixed signs, solstice and equinox. And one of the bars of the fixed signs is the 1122, 522 gate. And that mimics what we have in the Temple Dendera. You can see, the primary X and then, two interlocking 4 points for an 8-pointed symbol.
Why do you think that they're calling it a gate?
Okay, well, the portal. We're right on cue.
Okay, cool.
That was understood esoterically. Here you have, some symbolism that's very much like open your third eye and jump through the circle gate, and the signs of the two characters that sit on the golden gate. So I think gate is more of a terminology that we're bringing. I don't think it's a translation from the past. And so it represents passing through an opening, the door's open and the road is clear.
And that is done when you have the silver and gold, when you've mastered your masculine and feminine, when you've understood your inner outer world. Like what are those, what is in your understanding the idea to get out into your higher self, into another layer of reality?
It's a great question. So in the Gnostic scriptures, which I highlight in my book a lot, many of you might know what that is. These lost books that were found before the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they had like half of the Bible that, like you might have a parable and it sort of stops abruptly in the Bible, and you have the rest of it in the Gnostic scriptures. That's sort of like the hidden wisdom of the sentence. And one of them in particular, Gospel of Thomas, saying number 22 says, Jesus is being asked, like, how do we ascend? How do we enter the kingdom of heaven? And he says, first they're like, do we be like little children? Do we fast? Do we pray? He's like, no, you make the inside like the outside. You make the above like the below. You make it so that male's not male or female's not female. And when the two become one, then you enter the kingdom of light. And he kind of corrected him. It's like, not heaven, it's light, and it's right now. And so that's a powerful statement. And there's another one in the Gnostic scripture that talks about, you make the left and the right one and the same, the past and the future one and the same, the above and the below one and the same. So it's all about bringing everything fully into the eternal now moment. And you balance, the mind and the heart at the core of it, so that harmony doesn't have your ego running away, doesn't have your, living with your heart on the sleeve and being taken advantage of, so everything is in proper balance. This leads into a little bit about what Sir Francis Bacon did. He actually added a letter in our alphabet, like back then in like 1611, when King James Version Bible was written, you didn't have a J. And he added a J, and he straightened out the, basically created a cipher and attached our English language to sacred geometry that had more meaning. And when he did that, the words that he actually was crafting, now many people don't know that he got a hold, well, he became the Lord Chancellor to King James. And because he was a Shakespeare guy, a lot of people don't know, behind the scenes, he wrote the sonnets and the plays, and was giving the middle finger to his mom and the monarchy and stuff. And he basically embedded a lot of codes into the King James Version Bible. And so right here, there's a couple of them, like, I am the Alpha and the Omega, adds up to 11:22:33. I and the Father are one, adds up to 11:22:33. And so, he understood back then, he had figured it out that this whole thing was about the awakening of the soul. Actually, he called Shakespeare that because it meant Shakespeare, and it had to do with the Roman gods that represented the sign of Gemini, these spear shakers. So he's talking about the Silver Gate here. He's also talking about those twin characters, that everybody thinks that Set is an evil guy, you know, and Osiris is the good guy, and Osiris cut Set, or Set cut Osiris up, and all this kind of stuff. That's an analogy to a deeper story. It's about, again, the mind and the heart, and the keeper of the hidden wisdom, and like the king who's actually loving the whole tribe, and he's all about the heart. And so these things are pretty interesting. He had other ways of displaying that he understood this story. You know, we see similar imagery with the constellation of Orion. So now what's really important is how this grabbed my attention when I was getting the knock on the back of the head, like, don't miss 1122. And so I started to run numerology on every number that I could think of. And I did it thousands of times. And I found that 11 adds up to feels. And, you know, in his cipher, you got 1 in this, you know, there's no value to 0. So it's essentially an 11. And that 22, and this would represent Christ consciousness, sort of the master healer. And 22, mind adds up to 22, mathematics adds up to 22. And so this other value represents the master builder, the master mind. And so those 11 plus 22 equals 33. And here also 33 is 369, by the way, by his cipher. But without the
Which is what
cipher,
Tesla was so obsessed with. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm. So deeper down the rabbit hole, it can go quite quickly, even with an understanding that it's so fun to realize that inside of the flower of life is the image of the tree of life. But a lot of people don't realize that the tree of life, you've heard about the 22 pathways and the 22 Hebrew letters and the like. Well, those circles, there's 10 of them. Until you realize, if you want to access the higher dimension of the male and female God consciousness up here, you need one right there.
Yep.
And it's called like a blinder. Well, that would make 10 plus 1 is 11. 11 plus 22 is 33.
Mhm.
So this stuff, you know, is hidden all over the place in plain sight.
Yeah, you know, I went, you know, I met this guy who was called the Code Master, and he basically explained to me that every vocalization of language can be reduced to a numerical component within, you know, the earlier languages, Arabic and all these different ones, and that when you speak them, just like when you do a prayer, it has a very strong calling, because it's like Sedona. Like a lot of people have come here to pray from different cultures, right? And different, so same thing with a church or a place that a lot of people meditate. It's almost like those intentions have created another structure. So when people are using the Baha'i or whatever it is in those and speaking those words, they have a stronger mathematical implication in a way. So are you saying that if you go, you can look up the Sir Bacon, or how would you find the numerical equivalence of the English language?
So you can go to Gematria, you know, search for the cipher of Gematria. There's a couple
Okay.
websites that'll do that. And you can start, you know, running, you know, your name is interesting. Actually, when I ran my spiritual name, Mathues, it added
Yeah.
up to my birthday. And then I was like, okay, it got my
Yeah,
attention.
I mean, this guy was convinced that everything from the word of the Matrix, you know, that all the famous, even all the most famous movies and things like that were actually chosen because of their power numerically. You know what I mean? Even COVID was chosen, that name 9/11 was chosen because of, like, all these different things were chosen because of their significance.
So what I've discovered in what I call meta numerology is a 3-digit one. Instead of like breaking it down to a 1-digit or pay attention to the master numbers, there's a higher value that's far more explicit in its understanding for communicating to you. And so if you have access to, like, it's a master number system, like, you know, I'm again, there's just so much that would take forever.
Yeah, do you have?
I'm not going to David Wilcock you, you know, like 4 more hours. You know, you can just go check out the books and the videos.
Do you have an understanding of what now Tracy, and she's going to talk a little bit about this on the next session. She believes that we should all create our own numeric. She said it's part of breaking out of
I love
your
that.
thing. Yeah, she's like, you need to write out 1 through, I think she said 11, including 0, I don't know. And then you have to assign what those mean to you. And then you have to look to the universe to get those signs, whether you're looking at the stop sign or I mean, the license plate or whatever. But you, I noticed in some of your videos, you have listed out what you think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do you have a slide of that or a thing of
Yeah,
this?
in the car, but I can
Oh, that's
describe
okay.
it. I can describe
Well,
it
so-
lightly.
Yeah, because
Because it's got a natural unfolding from the story that if everything came from the mother, she would be one. And
okay, so the
then-
mother is 1,
And
the
then
creator.
number 2 would be separation. She created the father,
Mhm.
you know, and then, you know, correlating what the values might be, you know, from unity to separation and coming down to some of the more, you know, modern correlations to, let's say, what 5 might mean, you know, in numerology, but there's a deeper appreciation when you kind of construct it according to what if it is all about the unfolding of creation. And actually, beautifully enough, as long as we're on that,
Mhm.
to illustrate that some thought went into this whole thing by somebody that was making the numbers match the story.
Yeah, so why was Tesla so obsessed with 369? I mean, he was fully obsessed with 369.
Well, because it's a key to the universe.
Okay.
I can explain why, but let's hit this first. What you're seeing right here is along that path of the numbers unfolding. Okay, the ultimate objective is to get the 9. What's 9 about?
Completion.
Unity, wholeness, completion, precisely. What are the 2 last steps before 9? 7 and 8. What do 7 and 8 represent? They represent matter and spirit.
Interesting.
Okay, and so it's all about, you know, ascending matter into its higher form. And so everything about the puzzle is the 2 becoming the 1. And
Or
so
using your spirit to change matter.
yeah, I mean, when you roll it all into 1, we have a lot of capability when you're in harmony with the wisdom.
Exactly.
And so here, words were painstakingly created, left and right, 7 and 8, brain and heart, 7 and 8. The value of 7 and 8, what are they? 11, 22.
Mhm.
So, you know, there's a deeper message of this whole harmony of the mind and the heart is the key. When everything gets blended in, and we all blend, you know, together, we all get along together, you know, and stay balanced between all these paramount elements,
Yeah.
then we're going to function in our highest capacity.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's ground this back into that. Like, so how does one balance your heart and your mind? And can Ben, can we get a time check real quick?
7:24 or 8:24.
Okay, so in a few minutes, we're going to go into breakout sessions, and we're going to talk about your contact experience. So in fact, we actually, it's 8, okay, yeah. So in 5 minutes, we're going to wrap up the interview. We're going to go into your contact experience and we're going to do questions from the audience. So, but let's talk about what does it mean to you if you're saying that is the holy grail of getting out of your body and into your higher self and then creating matter, like using your heart and mind to create the world around you. How do you do that?
Well, one of my first experiences about healing an animal, I felt like I was focusing a beam from my heart and from my mind into that wound. And I felt that it was my intention and my desire. And so it was a blend of, you know, my thoughts and my feelings, you know, in the perfect harmonized beam.
And you healed an animal?
I did. I was 22, was the first time that happened. But of course I was, you know, in my whatever, like 10, 11 tweens. And I'm like, this wounded bird, I should be able to heal it. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't like put a formula together.
Yeah. And that experience affected you the rest of your life, or?
Oh, precisely. You know, you begin to be like, wow, is anything possible?
Mhm.
Of course, when I was 8 and had a precognitive dream, I dreamt of what was going to happen the next day, exactly the way it happened. I was like, oh, there's more going on than meets the eye, and it just makes you pay attention. And, you want to be the best person you can be. You're just going to follow the clues. And the more you knock, the door's open, right?
Interesting. Yeah. So the more you ask, you receive the wisdom you need.
Yeah.
So what would be your desire for your life? Like, what are you creating?
It's a big vision. I've been working on it a very long time. It's coming to fruition beautifully. It's more manifest this November than ever before. We can get into that if you like, but it has to do with providing the funds for everybody's projects to transform the planet.
Great. Is that tied into Saint Germain or?
Well, sure. I mean, what do they say about him? He's, the master of freedom, the master of sovereignty, the master of whatever. Like he's, being the guiding force for the planet to undertake its ascension. So, it's all hand in hand.
How did you know that was your mission?
Well, I had some voices speak to me when I was 19 that I couldn't ignore, and it compelled me to step it up, and I've been doing the best I can to step it up ever since.
So it was kind of like a clairaudience situation?
It's like my future self, my higher self embodied me and walked me into the bathroom, put my face in the mirror and turned my eyes are hazel, turned them green in front of my eyes, and I was like, get my attention, and it started to speak to me, and it said, you live forever, you are here to be a teacher in the end times, and a couple other things that I don't know how comfortable I am saying, but literally it was like, and after I got released from that, I was like, yeah, I kind of know it, and how do we get to do it now? And yeah, it's been a long time in the making.
Yeah, I think we're all been a long time in the making of our lives. And so it's interesting that you're telling us that this is really the opportunity between 11/11, knowing that we're already halfway through the birth canal here. And then on the 22, like saying, why did I come here? Like, what am I birthing? Like, what are we creating here? What is my piece, right?
So I saw the future when I was 22. I was shown a glimpse of it, and it had to do with, my father also invented a computer system, so that's how I went to work at the Pentagon when I was 23, and a lot of the glimpses of the future just kept coming true. And I also, when I was 17, got this book, Jane Roberts Seth Speaks. Any of you know that one? What does it talk about all the time? Your thoughts create your reality. And I was like, really? I better pay attention to my thoughts. And I started to experiment, and sure enough. And so I'm like, okay, this is a dangerous weapon. I'm going to envision the future in a very, light-filled way. And everything I envision keeps unfolding. And so the most recent one was how the Chinese elder put gold behind our coin, and we launched it today, our gold coin. You can check it out at GaiaPhi.io. But it's just literally when you show up with a golden heart for humanity, the things that you envision are provided.
The golden gate, the golden heart. Yeah. Interesting. So we're going to go into breakout groups right now. And we're going to talk about in those great breakout groups. If you don't want to go in, so Ben's going to open the breakout groups, but if you don't want to go into the breakout groups, just stay in the main group. We're going to talk to Mathues about his contact experience. This is all recorded, so don't feel like you need to stay in the main room because you'll be able to get their archives. And we want you to talk about what experiences have led you to know your mission or are starting to lead you, and if you see the number 11/11, and you can also talk about your contact experiences.
Cool, that sounds like fun.
I know, right? So, and this is also a chance for you to get feedback and support and love from the people in our EXO Metaverse community. So if you all are going to get 4 minutes each, 4 to 5 minutes each, there's going to be 4 people in the room. Wait till Ben puts you into the right breakout group. And then you're going to have a designated timer that's going to give everyone that time, and that's uninterrupted. If you want feedback, you can ask for it. So one of the things we've been working on at EXO Metaverse is this idea of really talking about having people come out and talk about their experience with contact, whether it's through meditation, dreams, higher realms, angels, higher selves, aliens, whatever it is. And then really kind of piquing the curiosity of other people, and then actually using citizen science to lead people into whatever experience they want. So if they want to do it through dreams, have the resources there to do that, et cetera, et cetera. So, so tell us about one of your contact experiences, or your first, or one of the more interesting ones.
Yeah, there's been a few. Are we talking ultra-dimensional, interdimensional, extra-dimensional? Are we talking ET? Are we talking?
Well, ET would probably be good because this particular group is most interested in that. But if you want to talk about your higher self or something like that as well. So just
Okay, well, probably, I guess the biggest one is when I was 29 and a spaceship landed in my backyard. And I got onto it and I went up to the mothership. And I was consciously awake for the whole thing.
and they let you remember when you got back parts.
I could have, but my own psyche sort of shut some of that down, frankly, because it was, kind of jarring. But the way it got started was really interesting because I was living with this spiritual teacher woman, and she was like saying, I'm jumping in the craft in the backyard. And I'm like, can I do that too? She's like, oh, sure, but you have to contact your guides. And I'm like, okay, how do you do that? And she pulled out a angel Ouija board. It was like totally redesigned, right? And she goes, okay, put your hands on this. And we asked a question and we started spelling a word. And I go, I have a whole sentence up here. It's going to take a while. She's like, that's what that's for. Threw it aside. She's like, what are they saying? And so, I spewed out a whole paragraph of how connected we've been. It was the Arcturians and how, long we've known each other. And actually that night when I went to bed, I still had the open channel, so to speak. And I'm like, can I come up? And they woke me up out of my sleep, like, you're like, what's going on? And I opened up my one eye, and there was a black eye, big one, looking at me, and I saw the reflection of myself, and I closed my eye, going, oh, and the voice in my head goes, you called. We're here. Let's go.
Well,
yeah. So that's pretty contact of first through fifth kind, I guess.
so you went out, you went to your backyard, you went up, and then.
Yeah, I saw the earth get small. It sure looked like a marble from up there, by the way. And I, remember parts of it. And when I came back down and we sat on the bed and we, I was examining her suction cups and, having kind of a intimate conversation about how much we love each other, and went back to sleep, I began to dream, and I had like 4 dreams that kept morphing until the moment I woke up. I last remembered being dropped off like from a white van, and we were over at a warehouse, and they showed me a tour and blueprints, and then I could remember the other morph dreams and the whole thing about checking out suction cups. And then that night there was a group channeling, and basically the other being that showed up with her at the foot of the bed, her name was Jazz, his name was Sayaj, and they beckoned me to take a ride, and I'm like, hey, why did you make me forget? And through the channel, Sayaj is like, we didn't do that. That was you. You were a little freaked out up here.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, like years later, I went and did a regression, and I remembered the parts that I might not have wanted to remember at first. Where I participated in a hybrid program. It wasn't a test tube baby version.
What kind of version was it?
Well, we didn't do a lot of kissing. We kind of got to it.
Cool.
So I got a daughter up there. What can I say?
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of hybrids around. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So do we have any questions from the audience for Mathues?
If you stun,
I think I
stun
messed up
looks.
the timing, and usually we have them asking questions, but I think we got everything sort of laid.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, great.
Oh, a voice in the box.
So my question is, were you contacted by Grays?
Oh no, they were the helpers of the Arcturians. They kind of resemble Greys, but they have unique personalities and everyone has a different looking face. And so the helpers of the Arcturians, because the Arcturians are about 5 feet tall. In my next story, they visited me too when I told them to come back down and hang out. They did, and they were like 5 feet tall, white, big black eyes with sort of a iridescent blue hue, like aura. And so, yeah, not sure how they have these helper beings, but they're really sweet.
So when you were on board, what was the environment like?
Clean, metallic people, I mean, beings dressed in robes and the like, and, you know, jumpsuits and the like. And that's, you know, it kind of like had the greeting and then it starts to fade.
Okay, thank you.
You know, it's interesting. I was reticent to get up and go jump on the ship with them in the backyard. And I was propped up on an elbow, you know, they're like, come on, come on. And I'm like, I don't know. And they go, let's go see Jesus. And I was like, okay, no problem with that. And so, yeah, I felt like he was there too. Yeah.
You seem to have open contact and an open dialogue, which is really wonderful. And I'm wondering if you have a practice, something you do every day that just helps center you, or like what you resort to whenever you need some type of centering or to open more of a line of communication.
Yeah, I did a practice like that for quite a long time. You know, dropping in and just feeling that connection through breath. And I mean, it could even be walking. It's just, you know, going to the harmonic of it, sort of. And there was a lot of conversation. In fact, I used to have the Ascended Masters speak to me very openly in my head for a couple decades. And all of the conversation stopped when I almost died in the hospital. Another long story, but they kind of, you know, when I went through that initiation, they kind of were like, so we're not going to communicate with you like this anymore. You know, you kind of made it to where you're, you know, mastering your own path now. And so it's been rare that they come in and say something. It's pretty important when they have to come in and say something. And so it's been less and less of that super open dialogue. You're welcome.
Any other questions? What are the core things that you want to communicate to the world right now?
Well, love is, you know, the most powerful force in the universe. So More love and not less is always the message. And, unity consciousness is all about how we, like here in Sedona, we're building communities together, the guilds that are coming together, all the exciting things about how we can, be representatives of the new earth and basically build a light capital, and represent global transformation is all predicated on that we be the examples of love and compassion and understanding and, really embody the principles of, what Christ consciousness is, right? And, from forgiveness to, even humility. And let's be the examples for the whole planet by, embracing one another.
What's been the hardest part of your journey as you've matured over the years and done your work and embodied your purpose?
My greatest virtue has become patience, because they spoke to me about playing a role in the future, and then they were like, it's going to be about a decade from now. I'm 26 years old. I'm having a channel, confirming things I was saying, because I always did a check-in channel type situation on my birthday. And they're like, everything you're envisioning is going to happen in 10 years. 10 years rolls around, I do another check-in. They're like, about that. We didn't want to tell you 20 years because you might have checked out. I'm like, great. The hell am I going to do for another decade? Whatever you like. Another decade rolled around, and my tune in was like, we're here, right? One more decade. So one more decade implied right now. So the toughest thing has been, believing that all the golden age divine perfection was going to be, provided for the golden age activation, but I had to wait. Hopefully it's just November 22nd.
We're ready, man. We're ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're talking about having seen glimpses of the future, or you were talking about this a little while back, but it's more probabilities and timelines, isn't it? That's a little confusing in terms of seeing a future. Can you just go into that a little bit?
Such a great subject. Yeah, timelines are malleable. There's a bit of a silent time war going on right now for the collective consciousness to be, anchoring in what we're going to experience. So that's a very good point. There's a lot I would like to say about that. Because I believe that we've been going through cycles of time where we've repeated this exact moment before, where we almost optimized these gates. And, there was a great reset because when we got through it, there wasn't enough people that embodied their divine consciousness to sort of tip the scales or launch the ambassadorship program into space that, transforms other planets. I mean, whatever it is, it has to do with, we literally can manifest whatever we want. And so collective consciousness is way more powerful than we realize. And I'm losing track because of the other things that I might like to say, but those are stories that take too long in the sense, I think that we have the pinnacle expression right here. Like if we have enough people, believing a particular thing in this, transformative hotspot of Sedona, we can actually anchor in the highest divine timeline. I hope that was helpful.
It was. What glimpses did you get? Because you said specifically like I was showing glimpses of the future.
Oh, yeah.
So what, was it, if you take it away from the probability and the influence of the collective, and then you were showing glimpses and then teased like every.
Okay, so that was like a utopian heaven on earth where there was cryptocurrency, whole globe united. There was a lot of positive systems. I wouldn't call them AI systems. It was like everything was functioning in its highest capacity for
Mm.
effectiveness and efficiency. And, like the types of things that you're talking about, where, we were utilizing the technology to, assist humanity. Not the version where, Al Bielek or somebody like that, who I also met, some decades ago, told the story of how he went to the future and it was AI and everything was chill. You were lackadaisical on the couch and you didn't have, an ounce of inspiration to change anything, let alone, evolve your spiritual growth. Everything was, AI handled, right? And so we're not headed to that kind of outcome. We're headed towards one where the technology is assisting the process of becoming.
And in fact, the search engine we're building is going to be hand built. It's not going to be built by AIs. It's going to be built by our own experiences and our own hearts, one by one, link by link. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that on our next session for Thanksgiving. But I'll give you a hint. We're going to be changing our name to LightNet. The internet has a dark web, and then we have the internet. But not everything on the internet is going to go into this future that we're building. It's going to be the LightNet, and we're going to be building a very powerful system to, like you said, help us all get through to this clarity in our lives, this balance in our lives, the balance of our masculine and feminine, the inner and outer, and really this magic carpet ride does arrive. It does arrive when you let go, right? And I think that it's a very contagious condition. And we can do it by finding our joy, because when you find your joy, you can get through some of the healing that you have to get through. And you can also help other people. And that's the point of all of this, right? Is to be in this joy moment.
Absolutely. And we've joined forces in that effort.
It's going to be an interesting ride.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
So we're going to close the breakout groups. So can you broadcast a message to them and just say one more minute? And is there anybody that wants to share their experience with 1111? How the synchronicities show up in your life? Maybe we could talk about what is synchronicity to you? Like, what do you think it is? Is it the
Sure.
gong bell of your life saying this way? What is it?
Yeah, I believe it's the lead into the alignment that has you communicating with your higher self and with the universe, so that you become, more one, in the sense that all the things that are sort of your highest path, are breadcrumbs of synchronicities.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
a good way
it's laden with numbers, it's laden with meeting people. There's a lot of that happens here in Sedona, of course. And so, the quickening of your puzzle pieces being shown to you is exactly what happened to me. I mean, I couldn't ignore it. And it was so cool too, because when I had a friend of mine edit my book that the first draft version 22 plus years ago, I'm like, I kept calling him, did you edit it yet? He's like, no, it's still in my briefcase. But you said that the synchronicities that you write about are real profound. He's like, I haven't even opened the briefcase and synchronicities are like beginning to show up in my life. Like, what is this about? And so really it's about the vibration of the information that, is the bridge to your greatest becoming. And so, everybody's synchronicity story is a little bit different, but I believe it's the calling card of your higher self.
Does anybody want to share a 1111 experience or experience of synchronicity? Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that you say gone, because when I was inquiring in just for the meeting, because I see them a lot, and for me it's natural when some people wonder and ask, and what my explanation to this person was being closer to the gong, being closer to the resonance. So we're in a sonic matrix of vibration keeping us all collected together. So the repetitions feel like you're closer to the gong, you're closer to the resonance of things. So
Mhm.
that's my general experience around the repeating numbers and the resonance of them in the gong form.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah. So go ahead and close the breakout groups. And we'll check in with the EXO guys on the Zoom. And if not, we'll close and yeah. So I'm gonna ask, Ben, let me know when they're back. Yeah, so yeah, you want to close that, yeah. So Earthwalk United is organizing a big convergence here in Sedona next week. So look forward to seeing you guys as part of that. And yeah, we'd like to have one final call for questions on Zoom. And if not, we're
I
gonna,
remember what you asked me.
I-
I forgot. How do you find, go ahead. How do you find me?
go ahead. So how do you find you online? The YouTube?
Yeah, StargateCodes.com is a portal,
StargateCodes.com.
portal to all my stuff. Greetings, hi.
I just want to apologize to people on Zoom. Since I'm not used to doing it like this, I didn't have the time and we're a little bit, sometimes we share contact experiences, but everything's a little bit whacked right now. But do we have any questions or other comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, this is John. And thank you so much for great presentation. I love your shirt. That's my birthday, 11/22.
Oh, how special is that?
So I just got great energy from tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I want to shout out to Ruby, who's and Ben, whose birthday is also a different Ben, 11/11 today. So,
Oh, fantastic. Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
My daughter's birthday.
oh wow.
Ah,
Special birthday, very special. So let's do one more minute of silence now. We're going to call people to this mass meditation at firethegrid2.org in January 13th. And we're also going to call some intention, call your higher self to come into your body. Why don't we try that? So we'll just spend one more minute here together where we're really going to call our knowingness in. So if we're unclear about what the next step is, if we're unclear of what we're going to be asking for on the 22nd, if we're unclear about how to get those golden and silver keys in our hands so that we can find our higher self, let's request that help now as we spend some time together in silence. Here we go. Okay, everyone, I want to thank you for being here tonight with us. We'll see you in the beginning of December as we take our break for Thanksgiving. And thank you for your curiosity. I'm glad you woke up at an early age. I'm glad you had all these strong experiences in your 20s. And I'm glad you went into the depths of the mystery schools and the Gnostic scripts. And I'm glad you you translated and shared what you could through your books and through your online channels. And I'm glad that you had the patience to stay the course, knowing that your mission is to provide financing for the new world. And I wish you all the luck in those endeavors.
Thank you so much. It's totally happening. So we're very thrilled. Thank you.